Story RH, the podcast that makes a long story short.
Welcome to all.
History is made of stories.
In this episode, we'll be talking about the role of HR with respect to a crucial concept at the heart of any company, its culture.
Company culture isn't simple. It's not about picking 3 values and shouting them from the rooftops. And the HR department has an important role to play.
So, HR, gatekeeper and timekeeper, what's the story?
A company's culture is a complex concept with multiple parameters, values, collective impressions, ways of doing things, and so much more. Some people tend to confuse a company's culture and DNA, reducing it to an identity.
So let's focus on 2 unique characteristics of culture which can help us to better understand the role HR plays.
The first characteristic is the fact that culture is a result of who we are, of the way we see the world, etc. In other words, you can't enact a company culture by decree.
Sometimes the culture you have isn't necessarily an asset for reaching your goals. A very hierarchical culture that enshrines vertical power, for example, doesn't promote adaptability in the field. If your strategy requires adaptability, you'll need to change your culture.
And that takes time. That's the second characteristic. You can't change your culture by decree, but you can change it. Company culture is a living thing. It's actually always changing, whether you want it to or not.
You can aim to speed up the process, in particular by using the acculturation method, which encourages the existing culture to assimilate foreign elements slowly but surely, but it still takes time.
So, it's important to remember that a company's culture has 2 unique features that shape HR's role. 1. You can't decree a company culture, it's a result. And 2. It takes time to change.
And these 2 characteristics bring us to the role human resources has to play.
HR is a gatekeeper. And the role of a gatekeeper isn't to keep people out and preserve what's inside whatever the cost. It's not about preserving the company culture status quo.
Being a gatekeeper is about making sure that people make informed choices when it comes to company culture. It's about monitoring the consequences of operational decisions as they impact culture. Such and such operational decision clashes with such and such aspect of our culture. Are we sure we still want to do it?
Being a gatekeeper is also about constantly asking another question. Is our culture helping us to achieve our strategic goals or not?
To put it simply, if our culture is incompatible with our ambitions, there are 2 obvious alternatives: change goals or change the culture, and accept in either case that the choice will have consequences.
And this is where HR's second role with respect to culture comes in. HR is also a timekeeper. Once again, the role is easy to understand and communicate, but much harder to actually play in the real world. The job is to make people understand and accept that if they chose to change the company's culture, it will take time.
And time isn't always compatible with the demands of our goals. But that's when HR has to convince the decision makers to be reasonable and accept the consequences of their choices.
No meaningful cultural transformation can occur without enough time.
To recap, HR has 2 roles to play when it comes to company culture. First, it is the gatekeeper, responsible for monitoring long-term coherency between a company's goals and its culture. Second, it is the timekeeper, responsible for getting decision makers to accept that the cultural transformations they want take time. Is that right?
Exactly right. Way to make a long story short. Story RH, the podcast that makes a long story short.